Cain killed. Abel's blood cried out loud from the ground.
We expected condemnation. An immediate death sentence.
But there was no trial, no execution, no revenge. We received the opposite. Why did God protect history's first murderer?
What did the mark mean? Why did it cause such dread?
It wasn't a prize. It was a divine break to stop the cycle of blood.
This judgment reveals a side of God that many ignore.
The judgment of Cain. The mark that protected him from being killed before continuing. Leave the like, subscribe to the channel, and stay until the end, because the details coming now are almost never explained in this way. The judgment of Cain. The mark that protected him from being killed. There was no tribunal, there was no jury, there was no penal code written in stone or papyrus. But there was a judgment. The first in human history happened in an open field, with the body of a man still lying on the ground and his blood crying out from the earth. The defendant was humanity's firstborn, the witness was God himself, and the sentence that would come from there did not include execution, prison, or death. It included something no one would expect: protection. And the most disturbing part, this protection was not given to a victim, it was given to the murderer. To understand what really happened in that field, you need to go back to the beginning. Not to the beginning of the crime, but to the beginning of everything. Adam and Eve had been expelled from Eden a few years prior. The perfect garden was left behind, guarded by cherubim with flaming swords that turned in all directions. No one would ever enter again. The couple now lived outside, in a land that demanded sweat to produce anything, that sprouted thorns where wheat should sprout, that charged every human being the brutal price of survival. It was in this scenario outside paradise that the first son of human history was born. Eve called him Cain. The name means something like acquired or produced. And when he was born, Eve spoke words loaded with hope. I have gotten a man from the Lord. Think about the weight of that phrase. After losing Eden, after hearing that the earth would be cursed because of them, after knowing that death was now part of existence, Eve holds her first son and sees in him a sign that God is still present, is still helping, is still building something. She did not know that this son would become the first murderer in history. After Cain came Abel, the second son. His name in Hebrew is Hevel, which means vapor, breath, something that appears and disappears. Some scholars believe the name indicated fragility since birth. Others think it was a name given retrospectively after the tragedy happened as a way to mark the brevity of his life. In any case, Abel's very identity already carried an omen. He would be fleeting. Two brothers grew up together in that post-Eden world, two sons of the same parents, two children who learned to walk on the same earth, who heard the same stories about the lost garden, who knew the same God through the accounts of Adam and Eve. For a time, everything seemed to work. Each found his vocation. Each followed his path. Cain became a tiller of the ground. He learned to dig, to plant, to wait for the seasons, to harvest what the earth offered. His work was dirty, slow, completely dependent on factors he did not control. Too much rain destroyed, too little rain dried it out. Plagues could devour an entire plantation in days. Being a farmer in that era required patience, strength, and an intimate relationship with the soil. Abel chose another path. He became a shepherd of sheep. He led flocks through the pastures, knew each animal by its behavior, protected the young from predators, lived in the rhythm of the green fields and quiet waters. His work was also hard, but in a different way. Less dependent on the soil, more dependent on movement. There was nothing wrong with either profession. The earth needed to be cultivated. The flocks needed shepherds. Both activities were worthy, necessary, blessed. The conflict between the brothers was not born in the field of work. It was born at the altar. The text of Genesis 4 says that, in the process of time, Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. Abel also brought. The two brothers side by side before some type of primitive altar, presenting to the Creator the result of their own work. It seems like a beautiful moment. Two sons honoring God, two offerings rising as an expression of gratitude. But here appears a difference that many people let pass, a difference that would change everything. The text describes Abel's offering with details. He offered of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. Firstlings, the first offspring, the most valuable animal, and the fat, which in ancient culture represented the richest, most precious portion. Cain's offering? The text only says that he brought of the fruit of the ground. It does not mention if they were the first fruits. It does not mention if it was the best of the harvest. It does not qualify. The difference is not in the type of offering. It is in the quality of the delivery. Abel gave the best. Cain gave something. And God saw. The Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering, but unto Cain and to his offering he had not respect. The text does not explain how this manifested visibly. Fire coming down from heaven upon one offering and not upon the other. A supernatural sign. Divine silence simply weighing in the air. Scripture does not detail it, and this omission is purposeful. What matters is that Cain perceived it. He knew his offering was rejected, and that perception detonated something inside him. Cain's countenance fell. The original Hebrew expression is intense. It was not common sadness. It was a closing off, a darkness taking over the face, a hardening that any person could perceive just by looking. Something was forming inside Cain, something dangerous. And it is exactly at this moment that something happens which completely changes the moral weight of everything that would come after. God intervenes, before the crime, before the violence, before the blood. God looks at Cain and asks a question, followed by a warning that should have changed everything. Why art thou wroth? And why is thy countenance fallen? If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. Can you grasp the magnitude of these words? God is telling Cain that there is still an open path, that acceptance is still possible, that the rejected offering is not the end of the story. But God is also warning about a real and present danger. Sin is at the door, like a wild animal waiting for the moment to attack, and more. God says that Cain has the capacity to rule. The choice is his. The control is his. He is not a victim of uncontrollable forces. He is a free man, warned and responsible. This warning is crucial to understanding the judgment that would come. Cain did not kill out of blind impulse. He was not surprised by an emotion he never saw coming. He was warned. He was alerted. He knew what was growing inside him. And even so he chose to feed it. But Cain did not listen. The following verse is of brutal coldness. Few words, no extra detail, no explanation of motives, no description of the method, just facts dry as bones in the desert. Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and slew him. Silence. The text does not record what Cain said to his brother to get him to the field. We do not know if it was a casual invitation to see the plantation, some excuse about needing help, or if Abel simply trusted and followed without questioning. After all, it was his older brother. Why would he suspect? There is no description of a struggle, of resistance, of last words. We do not know if Abel understood what was happening before dying. We only know that Cain rose up against him, and that Abel fell. The first human blood spilled touched the earth. And here something extraordinary happens, something that reveals a dimension of reality that human beings of that era perhaps did not even imagine. Abel's blood did not remain silent. It began to cry out, not a voice audible to human ears, but a voice that reached God. The earth, which Cain loved and cultivated so much, now held within itself the testimony of the crime. The soil became a living archive, the field turned into a tribunal, and God heard every drop. Then the judgment begins. The first question is not an accusation, it is an opportunity. God approaches Cain and asks, "Where is Abel thy brother?" God did not ask because he needed information. He knew, exactly where Abel was. He knew what had happened, he knew every detail. The question was an open door for confession, a chance for repentance, an invitation for Cain to tell the truth, to acknowledge what he did, to break under the weight of his own guilt. But Cain chose another path. His answer traversed millennia and still echoes, "I know not. Am I my brother's keeper?" The audacity is impressive. Before the creator of the universe, before the one who sees all things, before the only being who could forgive or condemn, Cain lies, and he not only lies, he returns a question loaded with cynicism and disdain. Am I responsible for watching my brother? Is it my obligation to know where he is? The irony cuts deep. Yes, Cain. In a way, yes. Every human being carries some level of responsibility for the other, especially a brother, especially someone who grew up by your side. But Cain inverts everything. He turns duty into mockery, responsibility into a joke. God's answer does not come with a shout. It comes with weight, with density, with the gravity of someone about to pronounce words that would change a man's life forever. What hast thou done? 3 words in English. In Hebrew, just 1. And in that question is contained the entire accusation. God is not asking for an explanation. He is confronting. He is exposing. He is taking away from Cain any possibility of escape. And then comes the revelation that destroys any defense. The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. Cain discovered in that moment that there is no perfect crime before God. There is no field isolated enough. There is no silence deep enough. The blood speaks, the earth hears. And God records, and now art thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shalt thou be in the earth. Do you perceive the construction of the sentence? The earth becomes an agent of punishment. The same earth that Cain knew intimately, that he plowed, planted, harvested. The same earth that defined his identity as a tiller. This earth was now against him. It had received Abel's blood, it became a witness, and it would cooperate no more. The punishment is triple, and each part hits Cain in a different place. First, he loses his vocation, the work he knew how to do, that gave meaning to his life, that connected him with the soil. That work would become permanent frustration. The earth would not respond anymore. He could dig, plant, sweat, wait. Nothing would come, or so little would come that it would not be worth the effort. Second, he loses his place. He would have no more territory. He would have no more route. He would have no more address. He would be a fugitive and a vagabond, wandering, always moving, never belonging. Third, he loses inner peace. He would carry forever the invisible weight of what he did. Every sunrise would remind him that Abel would not see another. Every meal would remind him that his brother would eat no more. Conscience would become a prison, but there is no death penalty. There is no immediate execution. There is no retributive justice in the sense we would expect. And it is here that the judgment takes a turn that defies all human expectation of justice. A turn that disturbs to this day. Cain responds to the sentence, and his answer reveals much about his inner state. He does not ask for forgiveness. He does not confess repentance. He does not demonstrate remorse for his dead brother. He complains, "My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid, and I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. And it shall come to pass that every one that findeth me shall slay me." Do you notice the focus? Cain is worried about himself, about his suffering, about his vulnerability. He understands that without God's protection, without the shelter of the original family, any person who found him could kill him. The cycle of violence was about to begin. Blood for blood, death for death. And then God does something that seems to contradict all logic of retributive justice, something that scholars debate to this day, something that deeply bothers those who expect criminals to pay in a visible and immediate way. Therefore, whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. The mark of Cain. Probably the most misunderstood mark in all biblical history, the most debated sign. the most persistent mystery of the first pages of Genesis. For centuries, people tried to discover what this sign was. A scar on the forehead, a change in skin color, some supernatural glow that warded off aggressors, horns, as some medieval traditions absurdly suggested, constant trembling that betrayed guilt, hair that turned white overnight. The text does not describe it. It gives no visual detail. And this omission is absolutely purposeful, because the form of the mark is not the point. The point is the function. The mark was not additional punishment, it was protection. Let that settle for a moment. The first murderer in human history, the man who killed his own brother out of envy, the defendant who lied to God's face, receives a mark that prevents others from killing him. God, who just pronounced a severe curse, now places a shield over the guilty. How does this make sense? It makes sense when you understand what God was avoiding. If Cain were killed for revenge, whoever killed him would also become a murderer. And then someone from Cain's family might want to avenge his death. And thus a third murder would happen, and a fourth, and a fifth. Humanity, still in its first steps, with only a few dozen people in the world, would drown in blood before even having a chance to multiply. The mark of Cain is a break, a limit, a divine intervention that says, this far. Vengeance does not belong to man. No human being has the authority to execute Cain. That authority remains with me. The mark does not absolve, it does not forgive, it does not restore. It, able to life, it does not erase the guilt. It simply prevents evil from multiplying infinitely. It contains the chaos in a moment when chaos could have destroyed everything. There is something deeply uncomfortable in this divine decision. Human justice wants conclusion. It wants to see the guilty pay in a visible, immediate, proportional way. Eye for an eye, life for life. But divine justice, at least in this initial moment of history, operates differently. It prioritizes preservation over retribution. It chooses to contain evil over satisfying vengeance. And Cain went out. The text says that he went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. Nod in Hebrew means wandering, vagrancy. Even the name of the place reflects the sentence. Cain went to live in the land of no place, in the territory of those who belong nowhere. But here something happens that also surprises, something that shows the complexity of human nature even after the worst of crimes. Cain built. The text says that Cain knew his wife, and she conceived, and bare Enoch, and he builded a city, an entire city, with structure, with organization, with permanence, and called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. How to understand this? The man condemned to wander, to never have a root, to be a stranger in every land, builds the first city mentioned in the Bible. Perhaps that is exactly why. Perhaps Cain was trying to artificially create what he lost naturally. He could not belong to the earth that rejected him, so he raised walls to delimit a space of his own. He could not have roots in the soil, so he drove foundations into stone. The city of Enoch is the monument of human stubbornness. It does not annul the curse, it does not reverse the judgment, but it tries to bypass it. It tries to create a new reality where the old sentence loses power. And Cain's descendants continued, generation after generation, the blood of the murderer running in the veins of hundreds, thousands of people. Enoch begat Irad, and Irad begat Mehujael, and Mehujael begat Methusael, and Methusael begat Lamech. 7 generations after the first murderer, the lineage produced a man who would star in another dark moment of primitive history. A man who would take violence to a new level. Lamech took unto him 2 wives, Ada and Zillah. He was the first polygamist recorded in the Bible, the first person to break the original pattern of one man and one woman established in Eden. And the children born of these unions brought impressive advances to human civilization. Jabal became the father of such as dwell in tents, and of such as have cattle, developing pastoral nomadism as an organized lifestyle. Jubal became the father of all such as handle the harp and organ, the inventor of instrumental music, the man who discovered that organized sounds could express emotion. Tubal-Cain became an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron, the first metallurgist in history, the man who discovered how to turn stones into tools, how to mold metals by fire. Cain's lineage produced shepherds, musicians, engineers. It produced culture, art, technology. The blood of the original murderer generated builders of civilization. Does this bother you? It should. The Bible does not simplify reality. Bad people can produce useful things. Broken families can generate extraordinary talents. Good and evil mix in ways that defy simple categories. But Lamech produced something more than talented sons. He composed a song, a kind of poem that he recited to his 2 wives. And the words of this song reveal how much violence had normalized in Cain's lineage. Ada and Zillah, hear my voice. Ye wives of Lamech, hearken unto my speech. For I have slain a man to my wounding, and a young man to my hurt. If Cain shall be avenged 7-fold, truly Lamech 70 and 7-fold. Can you see the escalation? Cain killed moved by envy and religious rejection. It was a crime born of a spiritual wound. Lamech kills because someone wounded him, because someone offended him. And he not only kills, he boasts. He turns murder into poetry. He sings about his own violence as if it were a trophy. And even more disturbing, he distorts divine protection. The mark of Cain, which God placed to prevent vengeance, Lamech transforms into a license to kill. If God protected Cain 7 times, then I deserve protection 70 times 7. Mercy was hijacked by pride. Containment turned into a pretext for escalation. This is the danger of misinterpreting grace. When someone sees divine protection not as a limit to evil, but as permission for evil, the result is always degeneration. Cain was protected so that humanity would survive. Lamech read this protection as a blank check for amplified violence. But the story does not end with Cain's lineage. Chapter 4 of Genesis closes with a note that changes everything. Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son and called his name Seth. For God, said she, hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. Do you perceive what Eve is saying? She acknowledges the loss. She names Abel. She admits the murder. But she also sees in Seth a continuity, not a replacement, because no child replaces another, a continuity, a new chance, a new branch. And then comes the verse that closes the chapter with hope. And to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he called his name Enos. Then began men to call upon the name of the Lord. While Cain's lineage moved further and further away from God, building cities and forging metals, but also celebrating violence, Seth's lineage took another path. They began to seek, to pray, to call upon the name of the Lord. It is from this lineage that Enoch will come, the one who walked with God and was translated without seeing death. It is from this lineage that Noah will come, the just man who will build the ark and preserve humanity from the flood. It is from this lineage that Abraham, the father of faith, will come. It is from this lineage that David will come. It is from this lineage that generations later, Jesus will be born. The judgment of Cain is not an isolated episode lost in the first pages of the Bible. It establishes patterns that echo throughout Scripture. The question, "Where is thy brother?" resonates in every law that protects the vulnerable, the stranger, the orphan, the widow. The mark that prevents human vengeance anticipates the cities of refuge established in Numbers and Deuteronomy, places where the accidental manslayer could shelter until receiving a fair trial. It anticipates the entire structure of tribunals, witnesses, processes. The idea that no man should execute justice with his own hands is born there, in that blood-stained field. And the blood that cries from the earth. This theme traverses the entire Bible until finding its final resolution in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 24. The author says that Jesus is the mediator of a new covenant, and that his blood speaketh better things than that of Abel. Speaks better, not louder, better. Abel's blood cried out for justice, screamed for retribution, demanded that something be done against the murderer. It was a legitimate cry, understandable, even expected. Innocent blood spilled should provoke a response. But Jesus' blood speaks something else. It speaks forgiveness. It speaks reconciliation. It speaks that the cycle can be broken not by vengeance but by grace. It says that there is a way where the guilty does not need only to be temporarily protected, but can be permanently transformed. There is an invisible line that connects that field where Abel fell to the mount where Jesus was crucified. Abel, the innocent, killed by his own brother. Jesus, the innocent, killed by his own brothers in humanity. Abel's blood marked the earth and cried upwards. Jesus' blood fell on the earth and opened a way downwards into the human heart, offering what the mark of Cain could never offer, not just temporary protection, but permanent transformation. Cain traversed the rest of his days carrying two realities that should not coexist: the guilt of having spilled innocent blood and the protection he never deserved. He built cities, had children, saw generations born of his name. The murderer was not erased from history. He became part of it. And perhaps that is exactly what disturbs to this day. Humanity's first homicide did not receive immediate death. He received a mark, not to be hunted, but to be spared. Not as absolution, but as a limit that said to the nascent world, vengeance does not belong to man. In the end, the mark of Cain was never about Cain. It was about the type of God who, even before the worst possible crime between brothers, chose to contain the chaos instead of inaugurating an infinite chain of blood. The mark does not justify, it interrupts. And in that interruption, before any written law, before any human tribunal, before any penal code, one could already hear an echo of what would come centuries later. Mercy where only judgment was expected. The murderer lived. The victim remained in the earth. And God remained sovereign over both destinies. This is the scandal of grace that begins in Genesis and only finds complete explanation at the cross, where the blood that cries out no longer asks for vengeance, it asks for reconciliation.